Yep. After watching episode 1 of Off Season and Monster Season, I kind of assumed this is the direction that the series was going to go. This idea that Sengoku herself can literally create any apparition that she wants. Yeah, episode 1 kind of flagged that. Like, she created this massive, crazy apparition, and I assumed that at some point Yotsuki was going to want to play off of that. And so it kind of makes me believe that while this episode is one of those, why do you not see that coming? It is also another one of those ones where it's like, yeah, I wonder if this is all just a test. Like, this is something that definitely Yotsuki wants to do, which she kind of implies. Like, yeah, this is something that Gain would probably see useful. So let's see if we could do it. Let's try it out. And here's an opportunity to try it out. And so Yotsuki's like, push, yeah. Try to create yourself. Try to create a god, basically. The moment that she said that she went a different direction than she did, I'm like, yeah, she's after the god Nadeco. Like, that is probably the biggest not good for, like, the town. Yeah, technically what Oigi said is that, yeah, those other three, probably more important for you because whatever they do is going to fall upon you. But Yotsuki's like, yeah, there's a god loose. We need to go stop the god. Really good episode, though. I do feel like this episode kind of lingered a little bit too much at parts. Like, I think it was trying to build up too much of what is a sort of compounding upon Sengoku, which is important. Nadeco's difficulty that she's facing right now is that she's at this turning point in her life that if I don't get this done now, I'm kind of in trouble. Like, I'm going to be pushed forward into the direction that society wants me to go in. My parents are no longer spoiling me. Like, the whole segment, like, out of nowhere, they've been spoiling your entire life, and then suddenly they're like, stop doing this pointless stuff and do what we want you to do. Which does make sense in the idea that she was whatever her parents wanted her to be for the longest time, and they spoiled her. And then at some point, she starts doing something that's off the grain, like it's going off this path. Suddenly, they care. Suddenly, they're calling what she's doing idiotic. But I do like that Yotsuki kind of points out to her, but you're still here. Like, you're just kind of paying the piper. You're still in the house. They didn't kick you out. I like how it kind of shows different shots of, like, yeah, you still have your toothbrush shit in there. You still have a room that you're in. You're still good. They're still spoiling you, technically. They're not sending you out to be independent. They're still taking care of you, so take advantage of that. But yeah, good episode overall. More Sengoku Nadeco, I'm happy. Obviously, again, is to point out to people, she's my favorite character. So, and yes, to get an episode where she literally creates 5, she has 5 versions now, is all good. Like, yes, anime of the year, we have 5 Sengokus. Now, I was kind of shocked. They didn't play off the 7 deadly sins as much as I thought they would. Now, they would have to have stretched it, which they couldn't really because they have technically 5 total versions of her currently, the current self, and these other 4 versions. So they can't make all 7, but they did get pretty close. I mean, yeah, you can obviously say they pointed out specifically, there's the Wrath one, there's the Lust one. I would assume the original Nadeco would probably be Sloth. Now, the God version, I would assume it would probably be Envy. Of anything, it would probably be Envy, because what triggered her essentially at that point to become the god, and what was fueling her at the time was the hatred for Araragi, and that could be partially in envy. She was envious of what happened there. She was jealous, essentially. You could probably say it's also pride, but I would probably say envy. But yeah, we were pretty close to having the 7 deadly sins of Nadeco in this whole scenario. But yeah, let's get into the episode proper. Again, opening up, talking about Nadeco in her current life. And I do like this. It was almost like it was trying to say something a little more than I thought it was trying to, so I might be reading too much into it, but basically talking about her life being 15 volumes. And this idea that, yes, as it plays through, if somebody was reading through it, they'd probably say, man, this girl is inconsistent. And anybody that loves the franchise would probably excuse it. But anybody outside would probably say, yeah, there's a lot of inconsistency here, pointing out how many points in her life she has shifted so much. And it's almost like the author himself, Nishioisen, pointing out, yeah, this is how, like, I guess fractured her life is, which technically plays into the end of the episode and seeing how different each one of these personalities are. But I think the interesting thing was at the very end, saying that, yes, she hasn't been able to get the story that she's currently doing published, and thus it will become a story that will never be heard. It will never get off the ground. And it makes me almost think that, like, it's also playing off of her current situation. The idea that right now she is at a turning point in her life. What she's currently doing might not get off the ground. Like, the story that she wants to tell of herself will never happen. Which I think we've pretty much established that the story that she's writing is pretty much herself, if I remember correctly. I think it is kind of a shoujo style, but I think it is telling the old Nadeco and her love for Araragi. Now, I'm not really certain exactly how much of it is true to what actually happened, or if it's just a love life that she wanted to produce, which I'm thinking that's probably where it's going. At that point, getting into the rule of 10,000 hours. I think that they've brought this up in this story before. I think Nishio-san has talked about the 10,000 hour rule. Definitely simplified it. The idea that it's basically a year. Not really, because you still need to be able to sleep. So yeah, probably more like 3 years. And this is all troubling for her because, yes, her parents have come out of nowhere and said, stop doing this thing that is a waste of time. Do what you need to do. Graduate, go work, all this kind of stuff. Stop doing useless things. I like how out of nowhere Yotsuki shows up and says, calling an idiot child an idiot. Like the entire time that Yotsuki's trying to talk her up, she keeps calling her an idiot, which is kind of funny. The idea, like, what was the other thing that she said? I don't think that your efforts are idiotic. Furthermore, don't think that your idiotic self is idiotic. What your idiotic self is doing is not idiotic. But again, this is kind of where it's starting to introduce the idea that Yotsuki is returning on a regular basis. Ever since she helped Yotsuki with creating this slug, she has been showing up on a regular basis, almost as if to pay her back. And the idea here is that she's showing up and she's posing. So she's not a hassle being there, even though she says that her presence kind of messes with her whole shut-in persona. Her showing up is good. She is helping her out because she's posing and everything. But at the same time, it seems like she's trying to repay her. But as we see later on, there's something else that Yotsuki is doing here. Now, it is presented in a way that Yotsuki is trying to give her an option. Like, there is something that you can do here. But again, she is technically trying to lift her up a little bit, which is kind of interesting. But again, always kind of throwing insults in there as well. And the idea that she's, yes, technically pointing out, your parents haven't kicked you out. You are still here. Yeah, I think what they're saying is kind of rash. I don't think what you're doing is useless. But again, what Yotsuki is saying here isn't necessarily confirming that Yotsuki thinks that she's talented as a mangaka, just talented in drawing and creating the apparitions. Like, this is the thing that I think Yotsuki's there for, is obviously, okay, I came here because you had the slug, I had you create it, I was able to produce it, and now I'm coming back because you're kind of interesting. You have a talent for something, and that was to create these beings. And that is why Yotsuki's there. Observing her, but also, I kind of wonder, because yes, Yotsuki does point out the fact that the General Slayers are going to be keeping an eye on her. There already are. She says, your current situation that you're in right now is in limbo. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do with you. And at any moment, they can come in and kill you. They can see you as a threat. But right now, you're in limbo. So I guess the idea that she's doing here is that you seem very useful. You could be very useful. I see talent in you. And so she's trying to bring Nadeco to Gain. Gain can take care of you. Gain can protect you. If you show to Gain that you're useful, then this fear that suddenly at some point somebody's going to show up and take you out, it will go away. You'll be under Gain's protection. You'll be useful and connected to her network. So let's do this. Let's connect it to what your current situation is. Let's have you prove to me and prove to Gain that you're useful, while at the same time fulfilling the desire that you have, which is to create multiples of yourself and fix the situation. Now, I say that, but at the same time, I do acknowledge that she did present to her another option. She didn't just say, oh, I only have one option. You're going to have to create clones of yourself using that same method. No, she says, this method you don't want to do. The better method was what she presented before, which is, yes, using her current status as a young girl to essentially get famous. Use your current life as a way of promoting your material. Just send a picture to your publisher that you're submitting this manuscript to, and they'll go, oh, that is promotion. You'll be yourself, your actual current self, as a cute schoolgirl, will be promotion for your material. Thus, your material, which I think that's exactly what kind of shuts down for Nadeco, is yes, partly because she doesn't want to expose herself. She's not comfortable enough with that. But yes, it would also make herself the reason why her story is successful, which is kind of, yes, not probably something that she wants. Yeah, I would probably lean more to the idea that she's not comfortable with that, putting herself out there. And that extends to the publishing online. She's got her stuff out there and it's not doing very well. It's got like 2 stars, something like that when they showed it. But additionally, putting a whole bio of herself on there, airing out all of her skeletons, that the bullying that she went through, the problems that she had with her teacher, all this stuff, becoming a shut-in, living in a shrine at some point. Her sob story becomes what's important and not exactly the content itself, which is something that she doesn't want to do. But again, Yotsuki did present that as the first option, and technically the better option. The other option, which was option 2, was something she didn't suggest. I'm not suggesting this. And I think probably why she's doing that is because she knew this was going to blow up. I think that Yotsuki knew full dang well this wasn't going to go well. I mean, we have one example, the slug. The slug didn't go well. It was too powerful. It was something that nearly took out Yotsuki. So why would Yotsuki be okay with the idea of Nadeco possibly creating something like that again? But still, it's interesting to me that Yotsuki is technically pushing her that direction, showing that there's a possibility that she can catch the interest of Gain. It's technically beneficial to Yotsuki, and that the idea that she was discovering Nadeco as what she could do, but at the same time, putting them in a massive big risk. I missed it, but yes, I did like the little note that, technically you have 1 year to figure this out before you graduate middle school. You got to get to a point where you can convince your parents, and it's kind of ironic that, you gave that same prospect or that same situation to Senjukuhara, that she had 1 year before graduation to get things figured out. And now, yes, it's being applied to her. Now her life is pretty much ending in 1 year, and she's got to figure something out. But yes, Yotsuki tells her specifically, make sure to make them distinct. She does point out that, yes, there is stories in the past of Shikigamis and how they create them and they attack their actual master. And she wants to create them and make them very distinct. Have them different characteristics, different personalities, and yes, different looks. And that's when they break down the 4 versions, which I think at this point, when we get to this point, everybody knows exactly what they're going to create, which, yes, one of them is a massive question mark. Let's be perfectly honest. But yes, we make the original Nadeco, the one with the bangs, the cutest looking one that I think. I love the bangs. I think it just looks way too cute. But yes, the bangs version, the one where she's hiding. Well, they call it the meek version, but it's the one with the bangs. It's very shy, very meek. The flirty Nadeco, which, yes, the one that went after Araragi. We got to bring that one. The one that has the bangs flipped back. Wrath Nadeco, which is the one at the point where Tsukihei did cut the hair. So I was right there. Last episode, I was like, I'm pretty sure that was Tsukihei. And yes, sure enough, it was Tsukihei, the one that cut her bangs, made her go crazy, blew up at her school, the one that's the reason why she technically can't go back to school. And yes, the biggest question mark one, the one where we're like, why are we doing this? Oh, because it's going to be more interesting. Because I think if you create the slug, and the slug nearly kills Yotsuki, what's the next best thing to do? And even Yotsuki suggested it. Again, this is why I think that Yotsuki's doing this on purpose. She's literally causing Nadeco to create something really powerful, I think knowing that it's going to cause a problem, but knowing that it's going to catch Gain's interest. If she just creates a meek Nadeco, why would Gain care? I think Yotsuki was prodding her into creating God Nadeco because she wants to create something really insane. So yes, we create a god. So yes, we basically create a god. An imperfect god, but still, we create a god. And yes, it goes just as well as I would assume it would go. And yes, to the credit of the story, they point it out specifically. At the very beginning, she says, all my personalities are so different. You'll see when you read through my life, you'll go, man, there's an inconsistency in their personality. This doesn't make any sense. To an outsider looking into it, it's all over the place. And so yes, obviously, when you create all 4 of those and stick them in front of you, they're not going to agree. And when she says the idea of actually creating these 4 so that they can all create your manga, that thus you'll get this 10,000 hours within this small time frame because you have 5 of you that are all working effort in order to create something. I'm assuming it all comes back to her when she gets rid of them, because otherwise that doesn't make any sense. Or at least they'll produce something that shows some talent by 5 people working on it. But of course, yeah, if you look at each stage of her life, none of them wanted this. From the very beginning, at least from the first 3, you have 3 individuals that were hiding it away. They wanted to go with the grain, or they were angry, or they were hiding, or they were trying to get Araragi's attention. None of these 3 wanted to have anything to do with being public about the manga. It was only after she ran into Kaiki that it pushed in her head to seek out her dreams. So obviously they're not going to be on board right when they're summoned to go start making manga. They have their own desires. Each one of those points in her life, she had a desire. Hide away. Go get Araragi. Be angry. Be vengeful. And yes, technically with the God one had nothing to do with it until it was pushed in her head that was something that she wanted. So yes, It goes just as well as you think it'd go. They all decide to leave. I think it would have been a nice touch if they actually had at least the first one, the Meek Nadeco, actually stay there. Like, she'd be like, okay, sure, whatever you want, because that was the whole thing with Meek Nadeco, is that she was just going with the grain, whatever people wanted. And so all she had to do is basically tell her, I want you to do this, and she'll go, okay, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do that. Because that was her, she was very passive in that way. But no, like I said earlier, they're very close to having the 7 deadly sins here, and the idea that, yes, they specifically say it's like lust is technically flirting Nadeco, wrath Nadeco is basically wrath. And like I said, I would say Meek would probably be sloth, and God Nadeco would probably envy or pride. It's kind of funny. But yeah, they split up and go. And like I said, I'm assuming Yotsuki going straight after God Nadeco. That's the biggest problem right now for the town. But yes, Nadeco ends up running into Oigi. Oigi finally shows back up out of nowhere. Now, it was very interesting, yes, Oigi taking the form of a male, but oddly enough, acting as if he's never met her before. And it's actually it is an act, because later on, yes, it does slip that you used to talk like in third person, so technically I slipped something out. I wasn't supposed to say that. He's playing as if he's never met her before, which is kind of interesting. Which I think he's done that to others before, so I guess that's not really necessarily a new thing. I'm pretty sure that Oigi's done that to a lot of other people. But yeah, there's a little talk here about knowing or not knowing. Oigi talking about, hey, you want to go? Are you going to school? I thought you were going to school, even though obviously noting that she's not dressed up for school, which is, yes, in contrast to seeing her previously in a school outfit, but still, that's the trigger for her to know, wait, you've seen my other self. I like how she's like literally yelling, I want you to take me, my current self, to myself. I'm trying to find myself. And it is kind of one of those things of like, I don't know necessarily that could be like in contrast to her character, like she is trying to find herself, because she's already found herself. Unless this ends up turning into something where she discovers that this isn't something that she technically wants and it's not going to work out for her. But that would be really in counter to everything they've built up in her character before, which I'm perfectly open to. If Nishio-san wants to take her character in the direction of she found herself back here, she thought that seeking out her dream was what she wanted, but then at some point she's going to realize that it's not necessarily her dream, it's just something that she grabbed onto. That would be curious, but I'm not going to look too much into that yet. But yes, eventually Oigi ends up taking her to school. So yes, middle school is where she's going to have to go to. So she's going to basically be forced to have to confront herself, which I'm guessing that's what this could end up being. Counter to what I said earlier is that this whole story could turn into her having to acknowledge each point in her life. As she said at the very beginning, these are different points in my life. There's an inconsistency to my personality and my character. People that are reading it from the outside looking in will think this is inconsistent. And that might be what she's ended up going to have to, I guess, confront each one of these points that feels so odd and so broken. Even herself, like she said, looking back at my older self, it's weird. It's weird looking at my younger self, which I can agree with. If you ever look at like a video of yourself when you're really young or something like that, I have some footage of me when I'm really young, and it's like, yeah, who is that person? Like, yeah, half the time it's always cringe, like you're acting goofy or something like that, but it's like, that just doesn't feel like me. I don't know why I would do that. And that probably could be what they do with Nadeco's character in this whole arc is, yes, now she has to confront herself, her school self, which the one in the school outfit would be the meek one. So she's going to go in there from the very beginning to the first one, the meek one. And she's going to have to confront herself to see how she was and, yes, see her personality and why she did that. And it might help her want to go back to school. And then, yes, confront flirty Nadeco and, yes, that whole thing with Araragi. And then confront the Wrath one and why she was so angry. This could be definitely a cool way of having kind of a look into her own personality and her own characteristics and why she did what she did. So, cool stuff. Anyhow, that's my thoughts on Monogatari series off in Monster Season. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to get my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. I'll probably be doing impressions of every single episode of this every single week, so definitely stay tuned. Additionally, I'll be doing first impressions of all the shows of the season, so definitely stay tuned. If you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have links in the description in order to support the channel. Greatly appreciate it, but it does, and y'all take care.